just publishing things that are not searched for. So people expect things to rank that don't give an answer. And if you want to rank in search, you need to provide something people are searching for. So people have this concept in their head that they know it's about keywords and I need to optimize this and I need to use this keyword more of several times in my article and then I'm going to rank for it.
Welcome to Inspired by Success, the podcast where I deep dive into the mindset of successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders. Get ready to be inspired and gain valuable insights to unlock your true potential.
Transform your financial future with this episode sponsored by KE Financial Services.
Today, we're in for a chat with a trailblazer in the world of entrepreneurship. Gert Mellak, the mastermind behind SEOleverage.com, is not just an SEO expert. He's cracked the code to building businesses from the ground up. From a self-taught coder at age 13 to steering the ship of international SEO, his expertise will definitely add value today. He knows how to dominate Google's rankings and he's built a team based in Spain. So Gert's experiences are a wealth of knowledge for entrepreneurs navigating the business landscape. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Gert.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the introduction.
No worries. Tell us about yourself and your story and how you became an SEO expert.
Yeah, expert. Everybody's kind of reluctant to call themselves an expert. At some point, I just stuck with the definition because by definition, it's just someone who has acquired a lot of knowledge about a certain field. And this is definitely SEO has been accompanying me for the last 20 years. I'm originally from Austria, moved to Spain eventually, built a digital agency here after being a freelancer in Austria before already. And in Spain now, we're doing all kinds of digital marketing, lead generation for gyms, for e-commerce sites, building ourselves the e-commerce platforms, building software, etc. And there was always one aspect that everybody wanted, which was coming up on top of Google. So at some point we said, hey, let's look into this. Let's figure this out for ourselves first. Let's then offer this as a service to clients. And rather than being one more service, we at some point doubled down on SEO and created a brand SEO Leverage to present ourselves as an SEO agency. So we do only search marketing these days. We don't do any social media work anymore. We don't do any websites anymore. We just really focused on SEO, which has allowed us to get to consistently like 30, 40 projects, a team of about 30 people right now and growing, and puts us in a place where we just have a really good overview about what's happening in search, what are those things that actually work, allows us to do a lot of testing, figure things out for our clients, and ultimately make sure that everybody's getting results out of it.
Cool. So with all those amazing long years in SEO, what changes have you seen? And because I know that there's always updates with Google and whatnot. So how do businesses adapt to these constant changes?
I think it's getting better. It was very much about tricking Google into bringing whoever you can to your website and then counting the traffic. So everybody, I'm not sure if the older generations listening to this might remember the traffic counters everybody had on their website. And now I have got 50,560 and 61. And now I call out my aunt and now it's 62. And we were just counting all the visitors. At some point, everybody figured out, hey, it doesn't matter to have a lot. If you have a lot of people on your website, you need to have the right people on your website. And this is really where I started to fall in love with search marketing completely, where I said, hey, it's one thing that you impact somebody with an ad and interrupt them in whatever they were just doing. And now, if it's interesting enough, they're going to take some time and check this out for a few seconds, what they just saw. But it's a completely other thing. Different thing is if somebody has set aside some time, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes to check something out, research something, figure it out, find a provider, find somebody who they trust, or an e-commerce store where they think that can ship this item or so, and they are really making their own decision. And we see this in conversion rates, for example. So conversion, when 100 people come to a website, we're an e-commerce store, and to purchase, we call this a 2% conversion rate. And we just see that people who do their own research convert at a higher rate because people clicking on an ad, they know intuitively they clicked on an ad, they were tricked somehow, they still check it out if it adds value, but they were tricked somehow. So they're a little bit reluctant to then really make a purchase, where somebody looking for a specific widget or something is very close to actually buying it. And this is very, very often for us really the big reason why we think search marketing is so important, because it's just actually catering to somebody who's already ready to buy in many cases, or at least wants to do some research. And if you provide the information, you can then still follow up with them in different ways to get the purchase.
Yeah, because nowadays with digital ads, Google and Facebook, it's so expensive and it's very competitive as well. So I definitely agree on the value of SEO, especially for the businesses. And now you also mentioned with the traffic thing, as a business, like I've got an e-commerce business myself, like traffic is one thing, but conversions is another. How can we get more conversions? Like despite the, like, yeah, how can a business get more conversions instead of just traffic? How can we get, like, I know we should be optimizing our page and making sure that, like the cart, like just easy workflow as well, but good content. But can you give any tips for businesses to help them get more conversions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, like you say, we need to make it as easy as possible on the website itself. Avoid any surprises. Nobody wants to find out their shipping costs just before typing in their credit card number. We need to be transparent. We need to show what is happening. When am I going to get the item? One thing I see all the time with e-commerce sites is that they do not offer not even like a range of shipping time or time to really receive the item. This is one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing.
Is
Because
there an app for
we're
that you
just so
recommend?
used to Amazon. No,
Okay.
it
Do you
depends on your
recommend?
settings, right? It really depends on your settings, right? So and on your shipping terms, obviously. But many people might have somewhere buried in their terms that they ship within 5 to 10 business days or something like that, but they don't show it on the product page. But we are just so used from Amazon to know exactly when this is going to arrive. So if we don't comply with this best practice, I would call it, it's just a major turnoff. So if I come to a page, why do I want to purchase this item? Either it's a gift, then I definitely need to know when it's arriving, or it's for me and I want to have it as early as possible, or at least know when I'm going to get it. Or if it's for my kids, I absolutely need to know when it's going to arrive to prepare them slowly for it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really crucial in every single way. And I've had countless clients who just didn't publish their shipping dates. And I was like, yeah, how are they going to make the decision? How is a user going to make the decision to buy from you instead of someone else who actually does tell them when it's going to be shipped? And I understand very often small stores have a hard time communicating this. Drop shipping has a hard time communicating this very often. But even then, I would probably still give them a range. And if it's 10 days, it's 10 days max, or 5 to 10 days. And then it's maybe 10 days. Give them something to actually make up their mind, because otherwise you just leave it open. And how would they know it's not going to take 3 or 4 weeks? They can't. And why should they then purchase? So this is one of the things in e-commerce, for example, we're seeing.
Interesting. And so can you go take it back into how can you explain how Google decides the ranking for search results?
Absolutely. So there are different criteria, right? So first of all, the helpfulness, how you present the content, what kind of information you give, etc., definitely factors in on every page. Google ranks pages. This doesn't mean it's not important that what the entire website looks like. So if you have a lot of irrelevant content, for example, on the website, it's going to be really hard to rank for your relevant ones. And this is
What
where
do you
it's
mean
easier to
irrelevant
have a niche
content?
website.
What do you mean for
Okay, let me
content?
explain this a little bit. If you imagine I'm selling SEO, right? Imagine I'm talking now about, I don't know, surfing on my website. And I have 80% of the content on my website is about surfing, but I actually want to sell SEO services. It's going to be really hard for Google to figure out what I am actually all about, because it seems I'm a surfing website. Why should they rank me if somebody searches for SEO? I had a client who was offering coaching services.
Yep.
And part of his coaching program was that her students would actually contribute content to the blog. It was just part of what they had to do, and everybody could write about what they wanted. And they did this with high frequency. So essentially what they had was 85% of irrelevant content. Irrelevant content meaning had nothing to do with the coaching program. And everybody wrote about what they felt was about personal development. It looked like a personal development news site. But there was no way she could rank for her core business terms. So very often these days when we go into a website, we usually audit the website and see what is the content on the site, how relevant is it for the core business. Very often it's all about content pruning first, making sure we get rid of what's completely irrelevant, and there's a lot after a few years, and then try to organize what's left. For me, it's very often like the join the dots game my kids play. where they
Yep.
connect dot number 1 to dot number 2, dot number 3, and then it's a cat. And it's very easy if there are not a lot of dots in the image. But with irrelevant content, we put like 500 more dots on the image. It's really hard to figure out what this actually is. So once we strip away those irrelevant ones that we don't need, it's very easy to make the connection. And this is what Google tries to do. They just try to understand all the content you put up to get an impression of who are you, who is this content for, and what are the kind of terms or keywords they should be actually ranking you. So very often sites just make it too hard to figure this out.
Okay, talking about content and writing content that consistently ranks on Google, what are your thoughts on like AI? And I know that Google's getting more and more smarter these days, but what are your thoughts on content that's written by AI and how does that rank? Like I have an SEO agency also that they help out, but they write content sometimes that is not spoken with my audience in mind, because my audience are the gamers and the collectors audience, and they have a different tone of voice. But when it's written by someone that doesn't understand it, it's a bit difficult. And like sometimes they can leverage AI, which I tell them to do it, but then you got to refine it, constantly refine the content so it speaks to your audience. But can you recommend any writing that helps rank high on Google, like writing content that helps for the Google ranking?
I think there are a few aspects to this. So first of all, the best scenario would be that somebody who knows the industry and knows SEO and likes to writes the content. This is hardly the case. So mostly the industry expert doesn't have time or the skills to write, and the SEO or writer doesn't have the industry experience. It's just a fact. It's really hard to get the best of both worlds. Find a gamer who actually wants to spend a few hours a day writing is not going to be an easy task, and on top of that, writing based on SEO instructions. So what we do very often is that we would brief the writer and say, look, this is from an SEO point of view, these are the things that should be in this article. This is how long it should be. This is what it should be called. This is what the title should be. This is what the topics and subtopics could be. We very often give clients an outline, for example, they could use for the writers. And then our client might go in and add a few bullet points here and there and say, look, this would be a really good angle in my industry. There was just this new game coming out that people really love, and there was this convention over there that we could mention here in this article, etc. Things I wouldn't know as an SEO, but you would know as an industry expert. And then it goes to the writer. So a lot of the writing process needs to be tackled already in advance in the preparation phase, to make sure that the first draft that comes back is already in this line. AI tools right now are making it easier and easier to actually upload even samples of writing, extract what the characteristics are, and use this as an input for the next writing task. So you could upload to simple tools like ChatGPT. You could upload a couple of samples or even 10 sample articles that you really like, ask it to analyze it, ask it to summarize the criteria and the main phrases that you always use, that are repeated, etc., and then use this output as the input for the next article. So write a new article following these instructions, these characteristics, make sure it has this, and then get a first draft written, but always be prepared to manually edit it. We're growing our writing team here in my agency because we know it's all about editing, not writing anymore. I'm not hiring junior writers anymore. I'm hiring editors because the junior writer does not get to the level of an AI anymore. This has been like this for a while. So we have been using AI a year and a half actually before ChatGPT came out, because we were already playing with how we could actually use different components. Google is not going to care. Google cannot ignore that writing now works differently. So they can't analyze every single piece of content and see if it's 50% AI, it's good, 60% is bad. They're not going to do this. It's too expensive for them to process. They're just going to check it for some main criteria and then put it in front of users and see how they react.
Okay. And speaking, I think ChatGPT is a game changer for content creators and businesses as well. I love it. But do you recommend any other tools that have helped you and other businesses as well, that was SEO specific tools? I know that there's apps now using SEO, like me as a store, that I always get recommended apps and whatnot, and people reaching out manually for agencies reaching out all the time, which I have to ignore now. But like, do you recommend any tools that businesses should not live without, especially if they want to rank in SEO?
It's really hard because new tools come out all the time now. Since ChatGPT was launched, new AI tools and AI supported tools and clones of other tools come out all the time. There were two brands definitely have been around for a while and definitely have adapted to the new way of doing things. One is Phrase, Frase, and the other one is Surfer. And both are really good because they do something that they used to do 10 years ago manually, which is actually taking out what is ranking on Google, taking notes, what do these articles have in common, and then produce something that was in line with what is ranking. Those tools actually analyze already what is ranking, and they give you instructions.
Oh, wow. And does it use AI as well to help it find these articles?
They have AI, I think, features now where you can even get it written, but just the analysis alone is already really, really good because it just shows you that you can't talk about email marketing without talking about subject lines, for example. You would be missing an important subtopic. You can't talk about a car without talking about wheels and an engine. And very often what we see is when pages or articles don't rank well is because they are just missing something that Google thinks is essential to make this a quality piece of content. And this is where I'm again connecting the dots, right? If I'm missing a few dots here, this is not a cat, or this is a cat without a tail. This is a cat with only 2 legs, for example. I need to mention all those topics and talk about the main elements that are relevant, because otherwise Google just automatically sees this is not good enough.
Oh, okay. Do you recommend, like, if we've already previously got content on our website that's like 3 years old, do you think we should be reviving that up and just as business owners, like, update their content and using, how can they improve that old content without having to keep rewriting it?
There's no way around keeping rewriting it. There's like a big misconception that people talk about content as being evergreen, but evergreen means that the situation wouldn't have changed. So first of all, it's hard to find an industry where the situation hasn't changed. I very often think about a typical jobs like a plumber, a carpenter, etc. But they use very different tools today than they did 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And then it's also about how the content needs to be presented. 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it was all about long content, 8,000 words, 10,000 words. If you could have 15,000 words, you would outrank the article with 3,000 words. It was really important to go as deep as you could. Today, we want to be as specific as you can. So if you can really answer the specific question people have in mind when they type in a search query, and you just nail it, you're probably going to outrank some big brands that don't. So it's all about the specifics. So even this content piece that you thought was evergreen 10 years ago, you just need to present it differently, maybe break it up into different sections, maybe merge other articles together. It really depends, but it's absolutely necessary to at least once a year or every 2 years, maybe with some less important articles, to rewrite it.
And speaking of length, is there an ideal length now that you mentioned, like you have to be specific, but is it long form, short form? Like, people these days have short attention spans. No one's going to read a huge long article. Is there an ideal length that you recommend that for blogs and content?
Not really, because it really depends on what we call the search intent, which is the reason why did somebody type in the search query. If I type in height of the Eiffel Tower, it doesn't need a 2,000 words article with the history of the Eiffel Tower and the materials used and how many people were employed, etc., to give me what I actually want. So Google is going to look at a random site they think is legit and is going to even extract the information and show it directly in search without even clicking through to the website. But if I'm interested in the history of the Eiffel Tower, this just sounds like a longer piece. So very often, the best tool we can use when you talk about tools is actually Google itself. If I want to rank for height of the Eiffel Tower, let's type height of the Eiffel Tower in and see what is it that Google actually seems to be liking. This is what they rank in number 1, 2, and 3. And check out those positions. This is a pretty good guideline of what Google probably is looking for. And then you can produce your piece of content, your version of it, making sure that you cover the main points, but in your way, presented in your way, etc. So if this is a long form article, you just can't rank with a 400-word summary.
Okay.
I always say a good starting point can be like 800, 1,500 words can be a good starting point, but I'd still do the research before coming up with this.
Nice. That's interesting. And talking about questions as well, I use this tool called answerthepublic.com to know what people are asking. Do you use that tool, or do you recommend any other tools?
Answer the Public is really good. very often you can get a long way already with research, and just research on reddit.com, on quora.com, in Google directly. Use ChatGPT to come up with questions people might be asking, and then just copy and paste them into Google and see is there actually really somebody searching for this question, because ChatGPT is not going to check. You're just going to make it up. But very often they come up with really interesting questions where they say, hey, probably somebody actually could type this in, and then you could just write about it. Questions are one of the most powerful things for the future, because we're just going to engage with the devices more and more in a conversational manner, be it voice search, which was really big and then was less spoken about anymore. I think voice search is going to come back with AI when we're just more used to talking to digital devices in a human way and conversational way. I think then voice search is going to be really coming back. But it's just going to be embedded in the normal dialogue. We just talk about something with this assistant, and this assistant is now in the back searching for something and say, hey, I actually found an interesting provider for this service, or an interesting fact about what we were just talking about. And then it's good if you can just have a question and an answer on your website. Is always going to be a good idea. So I used to tell clients, the oldest client I have right now, I think, or the long-standing client, I think he joined my program 14 years ago. And I remember in one of the first conversations, I asked him to check in with his sales department and ask them for all the questions people were asking on the phone, like those dumb questions everybody knows in the industry are asked all the time. Just make a list and write answers to them. And they have got articles that have been producing leads through this methodology for 10 years or more.
Wow.
Just because it was working so well. Those are the questions people actually type into Google as well. And those are the questions they're going to ask their digital assistant, their Siri, their Alexa, their whatever it is.
So you can recommend just having those questions, adding that, would having it on an FAQ page on your website help as well with the ranking?
I would even have probably individual articles about them, unless they are really belonging together. You could have individual articles and every question is a title, and you write the answer, you illustrate the answer, make sure it looks great and is easily consumable. But not even FAQ is a little bit hard, because Google, sometimes depending on how it's programmed, Google can jump directly to the specific question or extract it somehow. Very often I recommend to just have it individually on a website and link them together if they belong together. Very often it's easier to manage, and it also gives you more flexibility. It's going to rank for more things than just one question or one keyword. So it might end up ranking for 250 keywords, one of those questions. And then you want to add maybe some content or explore this a little bit more to actually leverage its potential. And this is really hard on an FAQ page.
Oh, that's great advice there. Let's talk about the world of social media, right? So, we've got all these social media platforms, we've got YouTube Shorts and whatnot. Is SEO truly the most crucial marketing channel? And if so, why?
I don't think it's necessarily the most crucial marketing channel for anybody, but it's definitely one of the channels, and I wouldn't want to have only one channel to build my whole business around. And we've seen this in COVID, for example. We got tons and tons of clients coming in because they were only relying on Facebook ads, and Facebook ads, suddenly nobody was buying anymore. Those impulse buys, etc., or purchases, they didn't work anymore. And then they started Googling their business, and they didn't find their business for their products or for their business, even for the business name sometimes. And they thought, hey, if I'm not even being there, if somebody searches for me or my products, how am I going to make a sale? I can't depend fully with my 7-figure e-commerce business on Facebook ads, because Facebook ads the ads account can be blocked. COVID or something like this can hit, something can happen where suddenly we're not showing ads anymore, and then I'm out of business. So this is where I just say, if you don't have a search pillar below your strategy, it's like really tough, right? In the old times, you would say, okay, I can't rely 100% on yellow pages. I also need a big sign on top of my store, just so people can actually find me if they hear about me, for example. You want to have in your marketing mix multiple pillars. Paid ads can work really, really well. SEO works really, really well. But it really depends on the business, and also thinking a little bit about when in their day people are going to be open to what you have. Is this going to be when they in the evening, when they want to explore and really consume information and content and learn a little bit more, they're going to search for it. It's not going to be just because you show them an ad, they read a 5,000 words article and an ultimate guide or something like this. But people might search for a purchase guide before buying a fridge or something like that and want to inform themselves and compare different models, etc. So it's just different entry points. What works really well, for example, is also the combination of SEO with paid remarketing or retargeting, where you can show ads to those people who have before been on your website. This works really, really well.
Yeah, can you elaborate? How do you blend different marketing channels and with SEO for the best outcomes? And how do we do that retargeting as well?
Absolutely. So retargeting, remarketing, if somebody hasn't heard it, it's essentially the mechanics is that you come to a website, the place a so-called cookie on your browser and your computer, which just enables the ads platform to recognize you when you're moving somewhere else. So imagine you're on Amazon, you check out a product, you then head over to Facebook, and then suddenly see a product recommendation. This is how it works. They just recognize your specific browser. They left a piece of information, the cookie, and this is how they recognize you. And this is really powerful because whenever somebody researches, they usually come across multiple websites, maybe check out multiple providers, but it might only be one that actually chases them a little bit with remarketing ads. And even if now is not the best time because you're in line at Starbucks and head off to work, for example, it might be later in the evening when you see this ad again and say, hey, let's check this out again. Now I'm in this moment where I can actually pay some attention to this. And this might, and very often in the evening, then it's also the willpower is lower. People are very often making those impulse purchases. So this could be a really good strategy. We had a client actually making our investment back through a remarketing campaign we set up for them, just because they were missing out on a lot of people. They asked for a lot of information to sign up for the service, and people didn't have it ready when they actually came to the website. So showing them an ad afterwards when they actually were at their desk and had all this information was really profitable for them. It's just giving people another chance, so to speak.
Interesting. Can you highlight also other common mistakes people make with SEO as well?
Common mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. Just publishing things that are not being searched for. So people expect things to rank that don't give an answer. And if you want to rank in search, you need to provide something people are searching for. So people have this concept in their head that they know it's about keywords and I need to optimize this and I need to use this keyword more often, several times in my article, and then I'm going to rank for it. But the entire piece needs to actually address something people want answers. It's like if you go out into the street and give answers to people who are not asking for it, you're going to come across as a little bit annoying and probably adding less value than if you actually are there and say, look, I can answer your questions about e-commerce and I'm now answering those questions. There's much bigger value exchange. So people, what do you see is that they have 1,500 articles on their website, but maybe only 200 answer something people search for. And the rest actually is just something they wanted to share on social media. It might even be interesting. It might be relevant for their audience, but it's not something people would search for. And there's a big difference. So whenever we produce a piece of content, we want to be clear on what we expect from this piece of content. Not everything needs to be for SEO. By all means, absolutely not. But if we want to have it for SEO, we definitely need to check what is it that Google is looking for to set up our piece of content for success already, not write something and then hope and pray that Google is ranking it and be disappointed if this doesn't happen. It would be very rare to happen these days. 20 years ago, it was easier. These days to see something ranking just because you did such a good job creating this article without any research, without any thought about SEO.
What about, because I have an SEO, the team that helps me, they write content as well, but in terms of articles and where that article is that important as well? Because, there's backlinks, I guess, and when they share these articles and where it's going to be, sometimes I think, gosh, that's not where my target audience will be. So what are your thoughts on that? Like writing articles?
It's definitely a red flag, right? You want to make sure when it's about backlinks, essentially are links from other websites pointing to yours. Okay, this is what we call a backlink. Why is this important? Because I can say I'm the best, but if nobody else backs me up, it's just me saying I'm the best, right? Yeah. So what Google used to say is links are a vote of confidence. So somebody writing about you or referring to you tells their audience that you're trustworthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't, right? So from this assumption, We know in SEO that it's highly beneficial to get more and more people writing about you and linking to you, because those are signals Google picks up and say, hey, if there are consistently people talking about this brand, probably this brand is legit, versus other people that talk about the same topic but don't have those links pointing to their site. Okay. But now there's one added layer, which is it doesn't make such a link only makes sense if the site is relevant. If you say, hey, this is actually a site that's related to my space that my audience might also check out, and if they link to me, it absolutely makes sense, right? If a random drugstore links to a random car repair shop, Google is going to say, hey, has absolutely nothing to do with each other. I'm not going to put any value to this link. It's more, it might even lead to some penalizations at some point because Google thinks you're trying to trick them. Whereas if you have like the car repair shop from the local town linking to the drugstore in the local town, they have something in common. They have the same audience. And this suddenly then it makes sense. So whenever we place a backlink or have somebody do link building for us, we want to pay the highest attention to the relevance. Is this a website where it's just natural that they link to me? Or does this seem forced or completely random because they link everywhere?
Yes, so that's very interesting. I might have to go back and see all the websites that they've written articles for. So yeah, that's great tips there.
The good thing is these days Google hardly penalizes, but they ignore a lot. So if you're spending money, if you're investing time, effort, money into somebody actually doing this process for you, you want your links to actually be taken seriously and not ignored. Google would ignore them. So you spend hundreds or thousands of dollars every month in link building. And for Google to ignore those links, it's definitely not going to have a return then.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just make sure they put it on relevant sites. And in terms of SEO for YouTube, I have or SEO for podcasts, for example, people are reaching out to me now and they're saying that they can help grow the SEO for the podcast, for example. Have you had any experience with that, or SEO for YouTube? Because as content, like for me personally, I want to know to help grow the channel as well. What are your thoughts on that?
We're definitely not YouTube experts. Definitely, there are people who are really, really good, and I know there's a lot comes down to the thumbnail and the title and how much engagement you drive in the first 24 or 48 hours, etc. There's an entire science there, I would say, that we definitely want to learn more about as well. But we have been working with a lot of podcasters, and there is like this standard procedure where podcasters would just put up a transcription of the episode and say, okay, this is my podcast, episode 15. This is the transcript. And then they would expect Google to send traffic to them. And this is definitely not working. This worked years ago because there was nothing else about this topic and there was hardly any competition. But today we need to see that Google only is going to show you if they think you're valuable for the target audience. And if Google thinks the target audience is actually looking for a well-written, easy-to-consume article, they're not going to rank a transcript. Whoever has read a transcript, I did it twice in my life. I read a transcript because it was 11 p.m. I was in bed. I was really wanted to know what this episode was about. It was not the time to put the audio on or the headphones in, and I read the transcript. It's not a nice experience to read a transcript, right? So at the very least, you should be kind of paraphrasing, summarizing. Ideally, write this article as if the episode didn't exist, stating the information with a writer, or using AI now to use the transcript, restructure it, present it in the 10 most important items, or something that's actually engaging to read, even if the podcast wouldn't exist. And then the podcast episode is just an add-on. Just think about how many people need to go to Google to actually be ready to consume a 30-minute podcast episode to find their answer. It's not going to be many. We're not on iTunes here. We're not on YouTube, where long-form content is still only 10 minutes, not 30. We're actually on Google and want to skim an article. Nobody reads from top to bottom anymore. We want to skim an article, find the answer. Ideally, Google presents it for us already. The podcast episode for SEO doesn't exist unless you really write an article about it. And then maybe the podcast for 1 out of 10 people might be an add-on where they say, hey, I could actually listen to this entire episode because I know the speaker, or I know the guest, or I want to hear more about it, not only my question answered. And then it might be the moment where they listen to it, but it's going to be very rare. So write the podcast episode as if there was no audio.
Okay. You can just reverse engineer it as well. Just get the transcript, summarize it, put it as an article, and then lead it to your podcast. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Just make sure that this is, it's like a blog post. It's like one more blog post. And you wouldn't write a blog post as a transcript. You would write it as an article that has a good hook, has an introduction, is engaging, is leading to the next section, etc. It would be coherent, it would be cohesive usually. And then you would add visuals and maybe add a video or something like this, and that's it. And this is how I would approach this as well. What we do help podcasters with usually is to actually find the topics that are being searched for. So if they don't know what to talk about, I would give them an angle and say, look, if you invite this guest, this is an angle that's actually being searched about. There's not much competition out there. So I know that if you record this and write an article about it, you have a good chance to actually rank for it. Whereas if you have like a big, broad topic, and then today we're talking about email marketing, and I want to rank for email marketing with a podcast episode, it's just not going to happen. So we can essentially, a big part of what we do is directing the efforts that we have available, the resources that we have available, to those parts of the business where they actually can do something.
So instead of, like, just say for the topics, where would you find out what topics people are searching for podcast episode?
We do this as a keyword and topic research specifically. So we would research what is your audience interested in. We do more and more audience research as well and see what do they talk about on socials. Where do they hang out? What kind of sites and other people do they follow? What do they talk about? And come up with a collection of topics. And then our clients pick and choose and say, okay, yes, 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 no, no, no. Pick from a list of topics. And these are then the topics they start using in their recordings. And just making sure that every podcast episode in this case directly also is going to get some traffic because it's going to rank, not only because of the audio.
Wow, yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, like, my favorite podcasters are like massive. You know, I've got Doak, Ryan Pineda, Ed Milet, Lewis Howes. And now that they're so big, they talk about multiple different facets and different topics and whatnot too. But I suppose when you're at the very beginning, the journey of podcasting or creator journey, then you have to focus on building it by doing what you mentioned before you can build your brand and go massively broad. Is that right?
Yeah, but I mean, even big podcasters could even get some additional audience just by focusing a little bit on SEO. Very often we analyze big podcast websites and they really don't care. They just have thousands and thousands of downloads. And it's enough for them to actually just keep doing what they do and make enough money and get their sponsorships or whatever their business model is. But even you could take their episode pages and rework them completely and get more affiliate links, for example, and affiliate offers, and make them work in a better way just by focusing on that. But for them, if someone has a big enough brand, they probably don't focus on those. They just have a bigger payoff or expect a bigger payoff elsewhere. For a small one that's going to small new podcast is going to upload their feed to all kinds of platforms to get a few downloads here, a few downloads there. Why would you skip consistent traffic you could get from SEO just because you don't want to do this extra step? I would definitely recommend everybody starting out, but even existing podcasts, to just make sure you have a content creation process. And one of those steps is to say, okay, are we actually producing something people are searching for? And this goes down to the episode title. It's very different if you have a title that says email marketing, or it says the 5 email marketing mistakes, for example, or you have an article that says email marketing open rates. It's just very, very different for the listener as well to pick and choose and find the episode they actually want to listen to or the person they want to listen to.
Wow, that's more like, definitely very useful and interesting tips there. So if we already have an SEO agency doing the work for us, what are some of the things that we should look out for and ask them in order to get what we paid for?
You might be getting what you paid for. So you definitely want to kind of think, okay, let's find a way how to assess if this is actually working for your business. So first of all, you want to make sure they have conversion tracking established, not only tracking how many sales do come through, but also tell you where do the people enter the page when they come from Google, from the organic search segment. Where do they come into the website? This might be an article, this might be an ultimate guide, this might be the homepage, this might be a service or product page or a collection in e-commerce. You want to know where they come in before purchase happens. Because if you know where people come in, imagine this is a purchase guide. And you notice that a lot of people the first thing they see on your website is a purchase guide. they then end up purchasing. And you see a conversion rate. You see 100 people coming in, 5 people purchase, right? Then it might make sense to create more purchase guides. All we try to do on a website, initially when we do an audit and assess everything, we try to figure out what is actually working to do more of what is working, right? If I can do more of what is working, I'm making more money. But I need to have the data. Very often sites don't have the data. They only check their Shopify store and the revenue numbers. They don't segment by channel and don't know what comes through Facebook, what comes through Google, what comes through paid ads or email marketing or whatever. And they have like a channel feeling. Is it going up? But there might be 3 channels going up, 2 channels going down. You need to know about this. So what we do for clients, we just break it down on a dashboard we have for them in our app, where they just only look at what comes through unpaid search traffic. And they just say, okay, this is the traffic. These are the entry points. And if I want to know where I made my sales, I say, okay, these are the 10 articles that actually drove the people in that actually made a purchase this month. So when you want to ask your agency for something like a landing page report for organic traffic, because this would show you where does the traffic land on your website before they click somewhere else. It's like the first page they see when they click through to your website. It's not always the homepage. Very often it's product in e-commerce or a collection or a blog article. And then also have the information on how those convert. Some might convert into purchases, others might subscribe to your newsletter or your promotion or your PDF or whatever you offer in exchange for an email address. You want to have this data in place, because then even without knowing SEO, without knowing conversion rate optimization, you're going to be able to say, okay, where do my people come in? And what about those 150 articles we just bought from the agency that never drive any engagement? We had a client literally come in, they hired an agency for 100 articles, and none of them was ranking.
Wow.
None of them was driving traffic, because they
You
just
could be wasting your
uploaded them. They
money.
wanted to get this package done.
Yeah.
Absolutely waste of money, but there was not even the data in place for the business owner to make a decision. They just thought this was a good thing, and the content agency had a good reputation, and they actually did good work, but just the website wasn't prepared for it.
Oh, these are great.
So just
questions.
figuring out where does the traffic come in, to which pages does it come, and then through Google Search Console, you can also see which keywords drive the traffic, which very often gives you an idea about the quality. How related are those keywords, those search queries, to your core business or to somebody who wants to buy your services? Because very often you're going to be surprised what you find there.
It's good to know. Make sure you ask your agency if they're not, like, if you're not getting the traffic, make sure you find out these results. So great tips and advice there.
Mm.
Can you share some other unconventional, other creative SEO strategies that have proven really successful for businesses that you've worked with?
For SEO, I think it's in general, it's going to go towards digital PR in general. So more and more getting the word out about your brand, getting noticed with your brand, and then the algorithms are going to figure out what you are all about, check your content, use it to give answers, etc. There's an entire space coming up now, really after many, many years. And it's been there. We have been working on it for 15 years. But now it's really coming up with this, which is online reputation management. And what this means is that we are going to be more conscious about how we come across as a brand, because the devices, AI algorithms, language models, ChatGPT, BART, Bing, Chat or Copilot as they call it now, they are going to use this information against us at some point. I have an example. We had a client coming in and it was a law firm, and they let go of one of their employees, and the employee was really mad and started talking badly about the brand on job platforms, and said, yeah, they don't care about their employees. The boss shouts all the time at his staff and things like those, right? Apart from me knowing them personally, I know it's not true. But it was just really, they just wanted to hurt the brand. So far, so good. Nobody needs to find this particular forum post. But now you go to ChatGPT, ask about this particular law firm and say, are they legit? And ChatGPT comes back, yes, they are, but the boss shouts at the staff all the time.
Wow.
Because whatever is out there on the internet is the
footprint
training
stays.
material. Is the training material. Output becomes the input for the answer machines, so to speak. So we are going to be very, very conscious about what is being talked about our brand. Do the AI engines actually understand our brand correctly? Do they differentiate us from other brands that have a similar brand name maybe? And they might confuse us. We are going to be conscious about how we write our brand, that we always have the same spelling, uppercase, lowercase, with a dash, without a dash, with a space, without a space, to make sure that the engines really, really, really understand who we are, who we serve. And we are going to be very conscious about what information is out there, uncontrasted. It's one thing that somebody puts up this forum post. It's another thing that the brand then goes in and shows their version of the story and balances this out a little bit, both for a human, but also for a machine. We have been running tests with AI where we have like a negative comment and then like a counter position. And it's a completely, and then ask the machine, what is this brand about? And it's suddenly a completely different point of view, just because it's contrasted. So we do more and more brand monitoring. People really want to know what their brand is about and what is mentioned on the internet about their brand, and do like weekly audits and send them reports and say, look, there are 5 mentions, 1 is negative, one might want to check this one out, etc., just to prevent what could actually happen. And this goes to even to big brands. We had a case where Nike, for example, wasn't one of the major brands anymore because they had manufacturing issues. So this is what ChatGPT thought, or Bart, I think it was Bart from Google. And I said, well, why isn't Nike in the top brands list? And they said, yeah, because they have manufacturing issues. And then you go back, and this is just one single review from 5 years ago about one particular model that apparently had an issue.
Oh, wow.
But AI doesn't know. They just use whatever input comes in, process it, and you don't really know what comes out of it.
So you're working on something to improve the output. I guess it sounds like you're working on something for that.
We have been working on mostly the process and which tools we use for this, because you need to monitor on one hand, but you also need to make sure that you then report, inform the clients. I can't speak in the name of the brand, but I need to communicate with the communications or PR team and say, look, this is what we found. This is a recommendation how you could possibly look into this. You want to search for your brand name, see what comes up in Google page 1. Maybe one of those bad reviews actually makes it to page 1 for whatever reason, and find ways to outrank them, to push them down or ignore or get them removed, whatever works. So this is just an entire field where we are more and more active. I'm about to publish a book about the reputation management as well, just because this topic is just so important, and it's going to get really, really weird when it just becomes something that we use all the time, because there's no guaranteed output. With ChatGPT, nobody can predict all the output that's going to be about the brand in all kinds of different prompts. There's no way to monitor it. There's no way to control it. I very often compare it to educating a child, where you kind of set a few boundaries, but you can't control every single thing they say or every single thing they do. You can just kind of train them, educate them, and then pray and hope it's going to go well, probably, in most cases. But they are going to make a mistake, and they're going to say something they shouldn't say. And it's exactly the same with AI. But the more training material they get, and the more directed this training material is, the more the output is going to be predictable. And this is an entire field. Reputation management was always only about outranking some negative reviews that show up, etc. But it has gotten a completely new dimension now.
Wow, that's very interesting, to the powers of AI and what's to come. I'm also curious about competitors' rankings, right? So how can you provide any examples or strategies for how we can leverage that and do it more effectively, leveraging our competitors' rankings?
Absolutely, yeah. You definitely. There are tools out there that just can give you some competitive insights. So as agencies, we're paying thousands of dollars every single month on tools in order to get access to this information. Because the tools, what they do is essentially they just fire thousands or millions of search queries against Google and see who comes up where. So they give you an idea that your competitor with this and this domain website comes up for these 5,000 keywords, for example. And then you can obviously look at those keywords, compare them to yours. Are you showing up there as well? And where? Are they showing up ahead of you or behind you? Are they coming up only for irrelevant queries, so you don't bother with them? Is there a competitor coming up now more and more, and you need to look into what they are doing? And we can maybe mimic something with our version of it, or just also know who is actually behind us, but closely behind us, right? Are they starting to get dangerous? Do we need to do something in order to maintain them at distance? So the competitive research is just one of the things we just do every couple of weeks when we revise a project completely. It's competitive research is always there. We benchmark and say, where's the market? What is happening? If there's a Google update, how did they get affected? How did we get affected? And just then draw the most important conclusions. Most important thing in SEO is just really staying on top of this all the time. And this is the tough thing for many people running their business and with their staff, where then very often need somebody you trust to actually monitor this for you.
Interesting. Thank you. And what tools? I remember seeing a tool like that before a while ago. Is there an updated tool that you're going to help businesses can actually help monitor their competitors in their rankings?
There are several tools. The two that are mostly cited are SEMrush and Ahrefs. Ahrefs. Those are like the market
SEMrush.
leaders. Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
But it's also, it's those are the market leaders, but they also require the skills to actually use the data. So we have seen clients sign up, but they're not able to extract the data that's actually actionable. And for me, if you work with somebody anyway for SEO, you shouldn't have to buy one of those tools and pay for them every month because you have those people actually, or this consultant or whoever you work with, to actually do this for you, and they should have access to those tools. I would only bother with data and research if you can turn it into actionable tasks. And so if you know that if you purchase this tool and spend 2 hours with it, you're going to have a task list for the next month to work on, by all means, go for it and do it. But if it's just to look at your competitors and like feel good because you now know something you didn't know before about them, it's a waste of money and time.
That's true. That's very good advice there too, because all the subscriptions do add up, and what are you going to do with the data? And so finally, what are you excited about in the future? Tell us if you've got anything interesting coming up. What's in the works for the next 5 years or 3 years even?
We're definitely growing the agency. We work in 3 languages already. Are going to double down on this. So we work in English, Spanish, and German. Definitely going to double down on this. We're going to see what AI is going to do. 3 years is a long time for anybody to predict where AI is going. This is why I was laughing a little bit. We're more working in like next 2-3 months. Let's see where this is, because it's moving so fast. But yeah, it's going to be a very changed landscape. I would just expect digital assistants to always be there. The digital assistants really processing all the information that we put out, more than clients coming to our website and reading it. We're just going to be with our information part of their assessment, I believe. We're going to work more on the brand, focus more on how we are mentioned and where. And I think we're going to see multiple marketing channels actually merge again a little bit together into a marketing mix. And this is an interesting one because we started everybody now working on one channel, and who has been around for a while was a general digital marketing agency at some point. And then the trend was to really focus on one thing and one channel and really figure it out. And now we see marketing is becoming more holistic again. It's more PR work, it's more branding. So we now try to pull the data together, and what can we find out on TikTok and on YouTube about this particular article, and how can we write this article and send people there, etc. So I think it gets more and more around focused on the brand. And that's definitely exciting with our reputation management focus. Absolutely exciting for us.
Oh, that's really good to hear. I mean, I found this really, really helpful. So guys, if you also found this helpful for your business, please do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, because it does help the channel grow. Yeah, I found this incredibly helpful and appreciate your time for this. And finally, where can people find you?
Sure, yeah, definitely happy to help. We have the website seoleverage.com. Head over there, check out what we have. We have a lot of free information there as well, scorecards, downloads, etc. And if you think you want to know more, just email us info@seoleverage.com. And we can check out the website, make a quick assessment, see what is the next step forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Gert. Have a good one.
Thank you, Linda. Great to be here. Thank you.